Hello everybody, welcome to this tank review of the WZ Model 1-4, the Chinese Tier 9 heavy tank. This is a very interesting heavy tank, and I must say that I absolutely love it. It is based on the IS-3 and the T10, which is basically the IS-8. So basically you get the best of both worlds. You get speed, not so much maneuverability, but you also get the armor and the firepower. So that's why I think this tank is really quite fantastic, and I personally love playing it. So if we take a closer look at this tank's stats, we can see it has 1850 hit points, which is basically average for a tier 9 heavy tank. It weighs 45.6 tons with the setup I have, and has a 600 horsepower engine. So it has a good power to weight ratio, and we can see that it takes that from the IS-8, which also is quite speedy. It has a very good speed limit of 50 kilometers per hour, so you'll find that if you're on a flat ground and you're going in a straight line, you will reach 50 kilometers per hour. However, it does have slow traverse speed, both turret and track. So its traverse speed for its tracks is 28 degrees per second, but its turret traverse speed is 26 degrees per second. So that is quite sluggish, but I do find that if you are getting circled, I don't have too much trouble turning around using both those traverses and taking out the enemy effectively. Now the armor is interesting. I don't have the IS-8. All I know is that from what I've heard, it's probably one of the worst tier 9 heavy tanks. I don't have a problem with this tank's armor. I think it's quite good, at least from the front. It's 120 millimeters at the front, but it's very well sloped and pre-angled as well. So if you're facing an enemy, or you are attacking an enemy, if you face them straight on, there's a good chance that if they hit anywhere above here and below here, that they will penetrate, that they won't penetrate, the tank. However, it does have a very prominent lower glacis and two very prominent cupolas, which I find are very easily penetrable. So if you're going to shoot at this tank and you're facing it dead on, I would say shoot for the lower glacis. If you can't hit that, shoot at the turret cupolas. However, if you are driving this tank, I will tell you how to effectively stop shots going into these cupolas. So if we continue to look at the armor, getting a bit sidetracked there, 120 millimeters at the front, which is basically just this part here, but it's very well sloped, as I said, very well angled as well. So there's a very good chance that anything hitting here will bounce. You have 80 millimeters of armor at the side, which is to be expected. It's not bad, but it's not good. If a tank hits here, it's very likely it's going to bounce. But then again, you wouldn't ever show your side of a pre-angled tank like that, because then the bullet will just go straight through there, or a shell, I should say. And it's 60 millimeters of armor at the back, which is to be expected. It's pretty crappy. Almost anything you come across will penetrate that. In fact, anything you come across will penetrate that. Now its turret armor, it's a bit of a love-hate. Everything below this area, almost this strange angle shape here, will bounce. But, which is to be expected from Russia and Chinese tanks. But anything that hits these cupolas, almost anywhere, will penetrate. They are very, very poorly armored. I don't have Tank Inspector working on my computer right now, but I can tell you that anything that hits these will penetrate. At least anything you come across. They're very prominent. They're not like the IS-8, where I find that penetrating the turret of the IS-8 is almost an impossible task. It is very easy if a tank aims and hits these areas that it will penetrate and go through, which is a shame, because one thing this tank could do very well is go hull down. In a sense, it's quite low profile, but if this tank didn't have these things, these cupolas, it could go hull down. It would be probably a lot more effective on the battlefield. Now the gun of this tank has to be my favorite part of this tank, and it probably is for a lot of other people. It's one of the, it's probably got, I think it's got the highest caliber gun for all tier 9 heavy tanks. The next being the E75 with its 128 millimeter gun. But it wasn't all fun and games before the 130 millimeter on this tank, because on the 110 you have this as your main gun, and it's a good gun for a tier 8 tank, meeting tier 8 games. Apart from that, I really hated this gun, especially on the WZ-111 1-3, because it really just wasn't effective, especially at tier 9, tier 10. So what I did was I put on enhanced torsion bars and grinded, or ground, whatever you want to call it, the 130mm gun, which is something I would definitely recommend. It makes this tank 100 times more enjoyable. So we'll get rid of the 100mm now for now, because what you probably want to see is this tank when it's at its best. So this tank has, of course, a 130mm gun. It has quite a slow rate of fire, 4.29 rounds per minute. I think it's a shot every 12 seconds for me, which is almost, I feel like I'm driving a KV-1S when I'm driving this tank. It's got good penetration. It's got good damage, of course, 490. It is a 130mm gun. It's got very bad accuracy, but it's got an alright aiming time. And I say it's alright because if you compare it, for instance, to the IS-7's 130mm gun, which I'll get up now, you will notice that the IS-7 has a horrifically bad aiming time of 3.4 seconds, and this tank has a 2.9 second aiming time. So I would almost say, and I know a lot of people agree, that although it has a slightly worse rate of fire, 4.29 compared to 4.38, and very minimally worse penetration with standard rounds, 244 to 250, the WZ-111 1-3, sorry, I lost my words, is almost a better gun because it has a much better aiming time, and as a result, it is easier to hit a tank, for instance, on the move, or at a distance with this gun. So you could almost say that this tank has a better gun than the IS-7, which is probably the biggest thing it has going for it. Now its view range is quite good. It's 400 meters, and considering this tank is basically a Russian tank at heart, it's not bad. And the signal range is stock standard. It's 750 meters, and with my setup, it makes it 782 meters.